The humid air of Miami pressed against the face of Emily Carter as she gazed out from the balcony of the Ocean View Resort, watching the crystal waters of the Atlantic shimmer in the morning light. It was July 8, 2007, and the 22-year-old had traveled from Phoenix, Arizona, to celebrate the birthday of her best friend, Megan Lewis. What began as a dream vacation would soon unravel into the most disturbing mystery a family could ever face. Emily had grown up in a middle-class neighborhood of Phoenix. Her father, Robert, worked as an accountant for a construction company, while her mother, Patricia, taught at a local elementary school. The youngest of three siblings, Emily was known for her adventurous spirit and the smile that could light up any room. That July morning, the group of 5 friends had planned a day trip to the Everglades National Park, where they would visit the historic Miccosukee cultural sites. Emily was especially excited. She had studied anthropology for 2 years at Arizona State University before switching her major to tourism. Her fascination with indigenous cultures had led her to read extensively about the tribes of the region, and she considered this visit the highlight of her trip. The tour bus left the resort at 7 a.m. Megan would later recall that Emily wore a yellow blouse embroidered with flowers, jeans, and her favorite brown leather sandals, a small blue backpack slung over her shoulder with a camera, a water bottle, and a few dollars for souvenirs. During the 2-hour ride, Emily snapped photos of the Florida landscape and struck up conversations with other tourists. A German couple remembered her enthusiasm as she explained, in fluent English, the historical importance of the site they were about to visit. Upon arrival, their guide, an older man named Stephen Oak, originally from a nearby town, organized the group to begin the tour. By 9:30, the Florida sun was already blazing, and the humidity hung heavy in the air. Vendors sold handcrafted souvenirs, wooden carvings, miniature replicas of traditional structures, and colorful textiles. Emily paused at one stand, where a woman named Luz Parker remembered her asking detailed questions about the geometric patterns in the fabrics, her curiosity genuine and heartfelt. The first stop was the imposing ceremonial mound, where Stephen explained the astronomical knowledge of the tribes and how their constructions reflected their calendar. Emily took several photos, including a selfie smiling with the mound in the background, an image that would become one of the last her family would ever see of her. After about an hour exploring, the group moved toward the ball field, the largest in the region. It was here that Stephen noticed Emily was no longer with them. At first he assumed she had wandered off to take more photos, something common among tourists. But when 20 minutes passed, Megan grew alarmed. Emily always told us if she stepped away, she later told investigators. It wasn't like her to just vanish. Stephen retraced their steps, checking near the mound, the warrior's temple, and the observatory. There was no trace. Concern spread quickly. Soon Emily's friends were calling her name, their voices echoing through the ancient grounds. More than 30 tourists joined in the search. By mid-afternoon, over 50 people, guides, workers, vendors, and volunteers were scouring the site. The county sheriff's department arrived around 3 p.m., led by Commander Henry Vale, a seasoned officer with experience in missing tourist cases. But Emily's disappearance was unusual. It was rare for someone to simply vanish in such a controlled, crowded location. Her friends provided detailed descriptions of her clothing and recent movements, along with photos taken that very morning. A systematic search extended beyond the tourist paths into the dense vegetation and trails leading toward the nearby lake. The search continued until nightfall, when darkness forced them to pause. That night, Megan made the hardest phone call of her life. With trembling hands, she dialed the Carter family home in Phoenix. Patricia answered, expecting to hear her daughter's cheerful voice describing the day's adventures. Instead, she heard Megan's broken words. Emily had disappeared. Robert and Patricia felt their world collapse. Their youngest, their adventurous daughter, was gone, over 1,000 miles from home. Robert began calling relatives, arranging emergency leave from work, and preparing to drive through the night. Emily's siblings, Charles and Diana, dropped everything to join the search. Back in Florida, Emily's friends spent a sleepless night at a small lodge provided by park officials. They replayed the day again and again, desperate to remember any detail that might reveal what had happened. At dawn on July 9th, the Carters arrived after a grueling overnight drive. Robert had pushed through without rest, Patricia praying silently beside him. When they reached the site, Megan broke into tears. Patricia embraced her, thanking her for sounding the alarm and staying behind to help. Robert, devastated but composed, spoke with the authorities. Commander Vale had requested reinforcements. By that morning, the search included Florida State Police, volunteer firefighters from Homestead, and a specialized search and rescue unit from Miami. The state attorney general's office dispatched detectives experienced in missing persons cases. The search widened to a 5-kilometer radius, with drones scanning inaccessible terrain and teams combing through swampland. Vendors, workers, and locals were questioned. Conflicting testimonies emerged. Luz Parker insisted she had seen Emily heading toward the observatory around noon, well after the group had passed through. A maintenance worker, Aurelio Chase, reported spotting a young woman matching her description, talking with a man near the sacred lake, but his account was vague. These contradictions frustrated investigators, memories blurred by time and stress. Still, a troubling pattern emerged. Multiple witnesses claimed to have seen Emily after her last known moment with the tour group. On July 10th, the third day, came the first real lead. A bus driver from a regional company reported that a young woman resembling Emily boarded his bus back to Miami on the afternoon of July 8th, around 4 p.m. He remembered her because she seemed agitated and paid with crumpled bills and coins. The revelation shifted the investigation. If Emily had indeed boarded a bus alone, why hadn't she returned to the hotel or contacted her friends? What happened between her disappearance and that bus ride? Authorities in Miami were notified. Surveillance footage from the downtown bus terminal showed a young woman stepping off a bus from the Everglades around 6 p.m. The image quality was poor, but it might have been Emily. More disturbing, the cameras captured her leaving the terminal, but there was no record of her arriving back at the resort. Hotels, hostels, and motels across Miami were checked, her photo shown to clerks and staff. The Carter family set up a base of operations in a modest downtown motel. Robert poured his savings into the search, while the family launched a media campaign across local outlets and the early social networks of the time. Patricia couldn't sleep. She spent her nights printing flyers with Emily's photograph, handing them out in supermarkets, bus terminals, and shopping centers across Miami. Her children, Charles and Diana, organized shifts so the search never stopped. By day they combed the streets, visiting hospitals and morgues, talking to anyone who might have seen something. By night they coordinated with authorities and updated the growing network of supporters, family, friends, and even strangers who had joined their cause. After a week of relentless searching without results, investigators began to consider darker possibilities. The lead detective, Frank Alvarez, a veteran of human trafficking and missing persons cases in tourist regions, raised the chilling idea that Emily might have fallen victim to a trafficking network. The Carters were terrified. The thought of their daughter being held against her will, possibly in horrific conditions, was unbearable. Yet it also gave them a fragile hope. If Emily had been abducted, maybe she was still alive. Detective Alvarez explained that Miami, as an international tourist hub, had seen a troubling rise in trafficking cases. Young women, American and foreign, vanished, and many were never found. The investigation widened to bars, nightclubs, and other establishments where victims might be exploited. Known informants were questioned. A reward was offered for any lead. Soon the case caught national media attention. Several television programs dedicated to missing persons reached out. At first, Robert and Patricia resisted going public, but desperation changed their minds. They appeared on a nationally televised program hosted by journalist Rachel Sanchez, hoping the exposure would bring new information. It did. The broadcast triggered hundreds of calls, most offering prayers and support, but a few providing possible leads. One in particular stood out. A woman, a housekeeper working in the Miami Beach Hotel district, reported seeing a young woman matching Emily's description with an older man at a seafood restaurant near the shore, about a week after Emily vanished. She said the girl looked confused, and the man seemed controlling. Detectives canvassed restaurants in the area. Some employees vaguely remembered a couple that fit the description, but no one could identify the man or confirm that the young woman was Emily. As weeks dragged on, leads became scarcer and less reliable. The Carters faced not only unbearable grief, but also mounting financial strain. The search had drained their savings. Robert returned to Phoenix to work, trying to keep income flowing while Patricia remained in Miami, living in a rented room and keeping vigil. Every morning she visited the state attorney general's office, begging for updates. Every afternoon she walked the city with Emily's photo, refusing to stop. Months turned into years. Emily's case became another statistic in America's growing crisis of missing persons. Official resources slowly dwindled as new emergencies demanded attention. Robert developed an obsessive routine, scouring online forums, missing persons databases, and any digital space where Emily's name might appear. Patricia joined support groups of families with missing loved ones, attending marches and awareness events across the country. In 2010, 3 years after the disappearance, the family received what seemed like a promising lead. An anti-trafficking nonprofit told them a young woman resembling Emily had been rescued from a prostitution ring near the Mexican border in El Paso, Texas. The Carters rushed there only to discover it wasn't her. These false alarms became recurring torture, each call sparking new hope, each disappointment cutting deeper. By 2012, 5 years in, the case had officially gone cold. Authorities had exhausted active leads, and Emily's file was shelved among thousands of others. But technically it remained open, and the family clung to that sliver of possibility. Patricia built an extensive network of activists, journalists, and fellow families, creating an informal but effective system of support and information sharing. In 2013, 6 years after Emily disappeared, Diana had finished medical school and opened a free clinic in Phoenix dedicated to low-income families. She named it in honor of her sister, keeping Emily's story alive in the medical and social communities she served. Charles launched a website focused on missing persons across the U.S., with Emily's case front and center. It became a vital resource, offering legal advice, psychological support, and a platform for families to share information. The years took their toll. Robert's hair turned gray, his face lined by stress, his health faltering under chronic strain. Patricia grew thin, her nights stolen by insomnia. Yet her determination never wavered. Then, in 2014, 7 years after Emily vanished, an unexpected call reignited their hope. A social worker in Gainesville, Florida, contacted Patricia after seeing Emily's story on Charles's website. She reported that a young woman, living in a makeshift settlement outside the city, bore a striking resemblance to Emily and suffered from apparent memory problems. The woman, known only as Anna, had been taken in by a struggling family. The Parkers, John, a construction worker in his 50s, his wife Dolores, and their 3 children. They claimed to have found Anna wandering confused near the highway back in 2008, malnourished and traumatized. Afraid of involving authorities because of their own precarious situation, they chose instead to care for her as their own. Over the years, Anna helped with household chores and looked after the younger children, never recalling much of her past, her real name, her origins, or how she ended up on that road. When social worker Maria Cortez learned of Anna's case during a routine visit, she immediately thought of Emily and reached out to the Carters. The family was electrified. After 7 long years, they had a lead that felt real. Robert, Patricia, Charles, and Diana rushed to Gainesville with photographs, medical records, and dental charts. Meeting Anna was overwhelming. She was around 30 now. Her hair darker, her frame leaner from years of hard work, her speech colored by the local accent. And yet, in subtle ways, she resembled Emily. But when she looked at the Carters, there was no recognition, no spark. Just curiosity, not reunion. Patricia showed her childhood photos of Emily. Anna studied them carefully, but her face remained blank. The Parkers, though compassionate, were protective. They had raised Anna for nearly 7 years. She was family to them. Still, they acknowledged the importance of learning her true identity. The authorities in Florida were notified. The case was assigned to Detective Paul Cannon, a seasoned investigator with experience in human rights and missing persons cases. He arranged for DNA testing to confirm whether Anna was truly Emily. Samples were taken under strict legal protocols, with a forensic doctor and a social worker present. Anna cooperated willingly, though clearly bewildered by the sudden attention. The results would take 2 weeks. During this period, the Carter family stayed in Gainesville, renting a modest hotel room and spending time with Anna and the Parker family. These meetings were emotionally complicated, as they tried to connect with a young woman who might be their lost daughter, but who showed no memory of them. Patricia spent hours talking with Anna, showing her family photographs, telling childhood stories about Emily, and describing family traditions she hoped might stir a hidden memory. Anna listened attentively and politely, but her answers made clear these stories felt entirely foreign. Charles and Diana tried too, recalling the games they played with Emily as kids, the songs they sang together, the small family rituals they shared. Anna did not respond with recognition or familiarity to any of it. Meanwhile, Robert began meticulously documenting every physical characteristic of Anna that might match their missing daughter. He noted a small scar on her left knee, similar to one Emily had gotten as a child after falling off her bike. He also observed that Anna was left-handed, as Emily had been. But there were notable differences. Anna had a faint scar on her upper lip that Emily never had, and her hands were calloused in ways consistent with years of manual work, something that didn't fit Emily's life before she vanished. On August 23, 2015, 8 years and 1 month after Emily Carter disappeared, the DNA results arrived. Detective Paul Cannon asked both families to meet at his office to share the official findings. The tension in the room was palpable. After so many years of uncertainty, they would finally get a definitive answer. The results confirmed what the Carters had both hoped and feared. Anna was, in fact, Emily Carter. The DNA left no doubt. The young woman who had lived almost 8 years with the Parkers was the daughter they had searched for since 2007. The confirmation brought a complex surge of emotions. Joy and relief that Emily was alive and in relatively good health were overwhelming. Patricia couldn't hold back tears when she heard the official confirmation. Robert embraced his children, and for the first time in 8 years, the family felt a crushing weight lift from their shoulders. Yet the joy was tempered by reality. Emily did not remember being Emily. To her, the Carters were kind strangers who claimed to know her but stirred no sense of belonging. Her life, her functional memories and emotional ties, were bound up with the Parkers and the community where she had lived for the past 8 years. Detective Cannon explained that the amnesia Emily displayed could stem from psychological trauma, a brain injury, or a combination of factors linked to the circumstances surrounding her original disappearance. He recommended comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation to determine the cause of her memory loss and the prospects for recovery. The situation also raised significant legal and ethical complications. Technically, Emily had been found and her identity established, resolving the missing person case. But her lack of memory of her former life and her established bonds with the Parkers created a situation without clear precedent. Did the Carters have the right to insist she return to them when she did not remember being part of their family and had built a different life? Did Emily, now an adult, have the right to remain with the family that had cared for her for 8 years, even if they weren't her biological relatives? These questions required not just legal consideration, but careful psychological and social assessment. Detective Cannon consulted trauma and amnesia specialists, as well as social workers experienced in complex family reunifications. Over the following weeks, Emily underwent extensive medical evaluations. Neurological studies revealed evidence of a minor brain injury that could have resulted from physical trauma, likely occurring around the time she originally went missing. This injury could partially explain her amnesia, though specialists could not determine the exact cause of her memory loss with certainty. Psychological assessments showed Emily had developed healthy survival mechanisms during her years with the Parkers. She exhibited no severe current trauma, though there were indications of significant stress in her past. Her personality appeared stable, and she had formed genuine, healthy emotional bonds with the family that had taken her in. Meanwhile, investigators worked to reconstruct the events that led to Emily's disappearance and her later appearance near Gainesville. This inquiry revealed disturbing information about what might have happened during the year between her vanishing in the Everglades and her reappearance along a highway near Lake City. Additional interviews suggested Emily may have been victimized by a trafficking network, just as investigators had initially suspected. But the specific details of that lost period remained a mystery because of her amnesia. The investigation also found that the Parkers had acted with good intentions in caring for Emily, though their decision not to report finding her prolonged the Carters' suffering. The Parkers' socioeconomic struggles and deep distrust of authorities, rooted in housing insecurity and fear of official scrutiny, provided context for their choices. though it did not fully excuse them. After extensive consultations with specialists and legal deliberation, it was decided that Emily's future should be her decision. With the support of psychological counseling to help her understand her options and their implications, a gradual reunification process was established. Emily would spend time with both families while receiving therapy designed to help her process her unique situation. The goal was not necessarily to recover lost memories, but to help her integrate her present identity with the knowledge of her history and biological family. During these months of transition, Emily began to spend regular time with the Carters while continuing to live with the Parkers. Gradually, she formed a new relationship with her parents and siblings, not built on recovered memories, but on connections formed in the present. Patricia and Robert showed extraordinary patience and understanding. Though they longed for the daughter they had lost, they recognized the young woman they found was different from the one who disappeared 8 years earlier. Their love did not diminish, but they had to learn to love her as she was now, not only as the child they remembered. Charles and Diana navigated this new reality with notable maturity. They had grown up during the years of searching and now drew on those lessons of resilience and adaptability to build a relationship with the Emily of today. The Parkers, for their part, showed remarkable generosity in supporting the gradual reunification. Though it was painful to contemplate losing the young woman they had raised for 8 years, they acknowledged the importance of Emily knowing her true story and family. Finally, after nearly a year of therapy and gradual transition, Emily chose to divide her time between both families. She established a primary residence with the Carters in Phoenix, but maintained close ties with the Parkers near Gainesville, visiting them regularly and regarding them as family as well. This solution wasn't perfect for anyone involved, but it represented the best possible balance under extraordinary circumstances. Emily had, in a sense, gained not one but 2 families who loved her, even as she had lost 8 years of her original life and the memories tied to that time. Emily's case became an important reference point for similar situations in the United States, underscoring both the importance of never abandoning the search for missing people and the complexity of what can arise when they are finally found after long periods. It also highlighted the need for more effective systems to report and track missing persons, as well as the importance of community support networks for families facing these tragedies. The story spurred changes in investigative protocols and raised public awareness about the national crisis of missing persons. For the Carters, the end of their search marked the beginning of a new phase of life. They had found Emily, but they also learned that family love can transcend memory, and that identity is more complex than they had ever imagined. Emily, for her part, continued her life with a unique perspective on family, identity, and human resilience. Though she never fully recovered memories from before 2007, she built a new story, rich with the love of multiple families and a profound appreciation for the fragility and value of human connection. Her disappearance and eventual reunification became a testament to the persistence of family love, the kindness of strangers, and the human capacity to adapt and create new forms of belonging, even under the hardest circumstances. Years later, Emily worked as a counselor for other families affected by disappearances, using her experience to offer hope and practical guidance to those facing similar situations. Her story, though marked by loss and trauma, became a source of strength and inspiration for others. The case also contributed to significant improvements in U.S. systems for locating and identifying missing people, including better coordination across states, improved protocols for amnesia-related cases, and greater sensitivity to the complexities of family reunification after long separations. The Carters never obtained complete answers about exactly what happened to Emily during the year between her disappearance and her discovery. With the Parker family, the Carters had learned that sometimes healing and rebuilding matter more than complete answers to the past. Their story became a reminder that families can be both biological and chosen, that identity can be rebuilt even after traumatic loss, and that love has the power to create new bonds, even when old ones have been broken by forces beyond human control. Emily's return to Phoenix in March 2016 marked the beginning of an adjustment process no family could have fully anticipated. The Carter home, which had stood as a shrine to her memory for years, now had to adapt quickly to welcome back a young woman who was both familiar and a stranger. Patricia had kept Emily's room exactly as it was in 2007, Posters of her favorite bands still clung to the walls. Her archaeology and tourism textbooks sat neatly on the shelves. Her old clothes hung in the closet as if waiting for her. But when Emily stepped inside for the first time, there was no spark of recognition. Instead, she wandered the room with the respectful curiosity of someone exploring a museum dedicated to another person's life. She leafed through books, studied the photos, touched objects once dear to her, but everything felt alien. It was as though she were learning about a twin she had never met. Robert took a leave of absence from work to dedicate himself to Emily's transition. In those first weeks, he drove her to medical appointments and therapy sessions and simply spent time getting to know the woman she had become. He discovered that she had practical skills she'd never had before. She could cook traditional Southern-style meals she'd learned with the Parkers, mend clothing, tend gardens, and care for children. These abilities reflected the years she had spent contributing to the Parker household. Her personality had changed too, more thoughtful, less impulsive, more deliberate in her choices. Charles, now a senior engineer running his own website dedicated to missing persons cases, saw his sister's return as both a blessing and a professional revelation. On one hand, Emily's successful recovery validated his work and offered hope to countless families. On the other, the difficulty of reintegration taught him that finding a missing person was only the beginning of a far more complicated journey. Diana, now a practicing physician, became the family's primary link to Emily's medical specialists. Her training allowed her to interpret test results and treatment plans, but it also made her acutely aware of the limits of modern medicine in addressing such a unique case. Neurological studies revealed Emily's brain injury was more complex than initially thought. It wasn't just a mild contusion. It was subtle but significant damage to the regions responsible for forming and retrieving long-term memories. Specialists explained that this could account not only for her amnesia about life before 2008, but also for her inability to recall the circumstances of her initial trauma. Dr. Raymond Mendel, a neurologist at Banner University Medical Center in Phoenix, became her lead physician. He had seen similar cases among victims of violence, but never with the specific circumstances of Emily's. He told the Carters' recovery was unpredictable. Some regained fragments of memory years later. Others never recalled their pasts at all. But he emphasized that memory loss did not prevent Emily from living a healthy, full life now. Her cognitive function was normal, her ability to form new memories intact, and despite the stress of transition, her emotional foundation was strong. Emily's therapy sessions with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a psychologist specializing in trauma and family reunification, became a cornerstone of her new routine. In these sessions, she worked not only to process her extraordinary circumstances, but also to develop strategies for coping with the emotional weight of having two families with very different expectations of who she should be. Dr. Vasquez had worked with adoptees meeting biological families in adulthood, but Emily's case was unlike any other. Not adoption by choice, but traumatic separation followed by years of amnesia. Both families carried their own scars from the ordeal. Early on, Dr. Vasquez focused on helping Emily articulate her own feelings, separate from the hopes of either family. Emily admitted to complicated guilt for not remembering her biological family, deep gratitude toward the Parkers for raising her, and anxiety about the decisions ahead. "I feel like I'm two different people," she confided. "There's the Emily who existed before 2008, and there's Anna, who I've been ever since. I don't know how to be both at once." That statement led Dr. Vasquez to design an approach centered on identity integration, teaching Emily to honor her lost past and her lived present, without feeling forced to choose between them. The Carters also sought counseling themselves. Patricia, in particular, wrestled with conflicting emotions, elation at having her daughter back, but also grief for the Emily she lost, the girl who would never truly return, even though her body was home. Robert threw himself into practical matters, helping Emily obtain legal identification, navigating bureaucracies to reinstate her official existence, and handling finances for her ongoing care. Yet he too swung between moments of profound joy and bouts of sorrow for the years stolen. Adjusting back to life in Phoenix wasn't just about family. It also meant adapting to a vastly different socio-economic environment. The Carter household, though middle class, was far more comfortable than the world Emily had known with the Parkers. Hot water on demand, multiple televisions, computers, these were luxuries absent from her life for nearly a decade. She sometimes felt guilty enjoying them, knowing the Parkers could not. Often she spoke of sending them money or gifts, which the Carters wholeheartedly supported. Charles even set up a fund to provide the Parkers with regular financial support, both a gesture of gratitude for raising Emily and recognition of the income they lost when she left. This eased some of Emily's guilt, though it never fully erased her concern for their well-being. During those first months back, Emily spoke with the Parkers almost daily, especially Dolores, who had been a maternal figure to her, and the younger children, who struggled to understand why their sister had disappeared from their lives. John Parker remained a father figure in her heart. His wisdom and direct yet compassionate guidance had shaped her profoundly. Maintaining those ties gave Emily a sense of continuity, even as she built new relationships with her biological family. The new family dynamic inside the Carter household wasn't without challenges. Charles and Diana, who had grown into independent adults in Emily's absence, now had to readjust to being siblings again. But their sister was no longer the child they remembered. She was an adult with her own personality and life experiences. Diana was fascinated by the medical side of her sister's case. As a doctor, she understood the neurological implications of Emily's brain injury. As a sister, she grieved the fundamental changes it had caused. Yet she also marveled at Emily's resilience and the adaptive skills she had developed. Charles used his expertise in technology and his network in the missing persons community to carefully document Emily's case. With her consent, he began developing educational materials based on her experience to help other families, always respecting her privacy and ensuring she was comfortable with what was shared. As the months passed, Emily expressed interest in finding purpose and independence. Her years caring for the Parker children had inspired her to consider working in early childhood education or social services. The Carters fully supported these aspirations, while reassuring her there was no financial pressure to rush into work. Dr. Vasquez recommended that Emily give herself time to fully adjust before making major decisions about school or a career. She also acknowledged that meaningful work could be important for Emily's sense of identity and independence. During this period, Emily began volunteering at a local community center serving low-income families. Her years living with limited resources gave her a unique perspective and an ability to connect with the families in ways other volunteers couldn't. The volunteer work also gave her a space where she could simply be Emily, free from family expectations and the constant need to navigate the complexities of her unusual situation. At the center, she was valued for her practical skills, empathy, and ability to communicate with both children and adults. The work also brought her into contact with others who had experienced trauma and dislocation. Though none had lived exactly what she had, sharing experiences with people who understood the complexity of trauma and recovery proved deeply therapeutic. One case affected her most, a woman named Isabel, a survivor of domestic violence who had fled with her 3 young children. Isabel had lost contact with extended family and was trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Emily related to her need to create a new identity after a traumatic break with the past. Through her work with Isabel and others, Emily developed a broader view of her own experience. She realized that although her situation was unique in its details, the larger themes, trauma, loss, survival, and rebuilding identity, were more common than she had imagined. That understanding helped her feel less isolated and more connected to a wider community of survivors. She began to see her experience not only as a source of personal pain, but as a possible source of insight and support for others. In the summer of 2016, the Carters organized Emily's first trip back to Florida since reuniting. The visit was carefully planned with Dr. Vasquez to ensure it would be therapeutic, not traumatic. Reuniting with the Parkers was emotional for everyone. The younger children, now a year older, had grown noticeably and were shy at first, but quickly returned to their familiar ease once Emily engaged them the way she used to. Dolores had lost weight and seemed older than the year suggested. The separation had been hard on her. She had lost not only the young woman she considered a daughter, but also the practical help Emily provided in running the household and caring for the children. John, for his part, expressed genuine satisfaction seeing Emily safe and settled with her biological family. His priority had always been her well-being, and knowing she was healthy and adapting brought him peace. During the visit, Emily also spent time in places around Gainesville that had mattered during her years as Anna. She walked through the settlement where she'd lived, visited the market where she bought groceries, and lingered in the spots where she played with the Parker children. These places didn't unlock lost memories, but they strengthened her emotional connection to that period of her life. The trip also included a return to Everglades National Park, where she had originally disappeared 9 years earlier. The visit was especially significant and emotionally challenging. Emily walked among the same trails she had toured in 2007, but now as a completely different person. Stephen Oak, the guide who had been present the day she vanished, still worked there. Now an older man, he remembered that day vividly. Seeing Emily alive and well, even changed, moved him deeply. "I never forgot that day," he told her. "I've wondered for years what happened to you. Seeing you all right eases something that's weighed on me for a long time." For Emily, talking with Stephen created a tangible link to the last moment of her previous life that could be documented and verified. Though she didn't remember the day, hearing his description of the enthusiastic young woman she had been helped her form a clearer picture of who she once was. The return to the Everglades also provided symbolic closure. Emily couldn't retrieve the memories of that fateful day, but she could honor both the person she had been and the person she had become. In a sense, she was closing a circle, returning to the place where one life had ended and another had begun. On the flight back to Phoenix, she reflected on how the trip had shaped her understanding of herself. She hadn't recovered lost memories, but she had strengthened her acceptance of her full story, the parts she could recall and the parts that remained in the dark. She realized her identity didn't have to be defined by what she had lost, but by how she chose to live with that loss. The Parkers had taught her resilience, adaptability, and the importance of caring for others. The Carters were teaching her about the persistence of love, the power of hope, and the value of never giving up on the people you love. Back in Phoenix, Emily decided to enroll in evening classes to complete her high school education, which had been interrupted by her disappearance. At 31, she felt finishing school mattered both practically and symbolically. It honored the aspirations she once had, even if she couldn't remember them precisely. The night classes offered another social context where she could interact with people who didn't know her story. Her classmates were mostly young adults whose education had been interrupted for many reasons: early pregnancies, family financial needs, or personal struggles. Emily found she related well to people who were also rebuilding or redirecting their lives. With Emily's permission, Charles carefully documented his sister's reintegration as part of his ongoing work on missing persons. His website now included a section on After the Finding, Navigating Family Reunification, quickly becoming a valuable resource for other families in similar situations. Charles's work drew attention from international organizations focused on missing persons. He was invited to present Emily's case at human rights conferences and to collaborate with researchers studying the long-term effects of forced disappearance on families. Yet he always made sure the work served Emily and other families first, not his resume. Emily had final say over what parts of her story were shared publicly, and she was always presented as an empowered survivor, not a passive victim. Diana, meanwhile, began specializing in trauma medicine, inspired in part by her sister's experience. Her hospital work brought her into contact with other survivors of violence and trauma, and she developed a particular interest in the medical aspects of recovery from brain injury. She also volunteered with organizations providing medical care to families of missing persons, understanding their specific needs from personal experience. Her professional path became an extension of what the Carters had lived through during the search for Emily. Robert returned to work with a transformed perspective on balancing job and family. Losing and finding his daughter taught him that relationships can't be taken for granted, and that lost time can never truly be recovered. He began taking regular trips with Emily to visit the Parkers, building his own relationship with the people who had cared for her so many years. Those visits evolved from emotionally fraught reunions into genuine family celebrations. Two families, united by love for the same person, sharing time together. Patricia channeled her experience into grassroots advocacy. She joined organizations pushing for better resources for families of the missing and began offering emotional support to other mothers facing similar heartbreak. Her uncommon experience of a successful reunification made her a source of hope, though she was always careful not to promise others the same ending. Instead, she focused on practical and emotional support for the search, whatever its outcome. By late 2016, Emily had established a steady routine in Phoenix. She attended night classes 3 days a week, volunteered at the community center 2 days a week, and kept regular therapy sessions with Dr. Vasquez. Weekends often meant family activities with the Carters and frequent phone calls with the Parkers. She also began socializing with classmates and other volunteers, building relationships important to developing an identity not solely defined by her traumatic history or complex family ties. One of these friendships grew into something more. Luis, a classmate who worked as a mechanic by day and studied at night, started spending time with Emily outside of school. He knew the basics, that she had disappeared and been reunited with her family, but he wasn't fixated on the dramatic details of her past. Luis was interested in the Emily of today, her sense of humor, her compassion for others, her determination to finish her education, and her ability to find joy in the simple things. With him, Emily experienced what it meant to be valued for who she was now, not for what she had survived. The Carter family first met the news of Emily's romantic relationship with mixed feelings. They were happy to see her building normal social connections, but they also carried natural protective concerns about anyone entering her life after all she had endured. Yet after meeting Luis and watching the way he interacted with Emily, their doubts eased. He was respectful, genuinely caring, and seemed to understand instinctively that Emily needed space to navigate her unique situation without added pressure. Dr. Vasquez had spoken with Emily about the importance of healthy romantic relationships as part of her growth into an independent adult. Together they worked on strategies for sharing her story with future partners in ways that were honest, but that didn't allow her trauma to completely define how others saw her. As the 10th anniversary of her original disappearance approached, Emily reflected on the path she had traveled since reuniting with the Carters. She had not regained her missing memories and had accepted that she probably never would. But she had built a rich and meaningful life that honored both her lost past and her lived present. Her relationships with both families had evolved into something unique but steady. The Carters had learned to love the Emily of today, not just grieve the Emily of the past. The Parkers had found ways to maintain their bond with her while respecting her new life with her biological family. Emily herself developed a personal understanding of identity as fluid and multifaceted. She did not have to choose between being Emily or being Anna. She could integrate elements of both into a complete and authentic self. Her experience had taught her that people can be resilient in ways they never imagine, and that family can take forms beyond traditional definitions. Her story had a broader impact, too. In Phoenix, she became a symbol of hope for families of the missing. In Florida, her case raised awareness about the importance of reporting the discovery of disoriented or vulnerable people to authorities, no matter the fears about official involvement. At the community center where she volunteered, new programs were developed to help trauma survivors rebuild their lives, many inspired by Emily's example. Her ability to transform personal trauma into a source of empathy and support demonstrated the healing power of community service as she prepared to complete her high school diploma and consider her next steps in education and career. Emily also began thinking about more formal ways to contribute to efforts supporting missing persons and their families. Her unique combination of lived experience, insight into family reunification, and ability to work with people in crisis made her an ideal candidate for social services. But she was equally aware of the need for healthy boundaries, determined not to let her professional identity become wholly defined by her trauma. With Dr. Vasquez's guidance, Emily developed a nuanced understanding of how her experience could be both a strength and a risk. She knew maintaining her own mental health was essential if she wanted to use her past to help others. Looking toward the future, Emily no longer felt defined primarily by what she had lost or could not remember. Instead, she felt empowered by what she had built since reuniting with her family, and by the ways she had turned pain into compassion and service. Her story showed that recovery from trauma doesn't always mean returning to what was before. It can mean building something new and valuable from the broken pieces. Her life was not the one she might have had if she had never disappeared, but it was rich, meaningful, and authentically hers. The Carters had learned that family love can be strong enough to survive even the most traumatic separations, and that families can adapt and grow in ways once unimaginable. Their experience proved that hope, however irrational it may sometimes seem, can be justified, and that refusing to give up on those you love can literally change lives. For the Parkers, the experience confirmed that acts of kindness toward strangers can ripple far beyond what anyone can foresee. Their choice to care for a disoriented young woman they found along the roadside had not only saved a life, but had created family bonds that would last forever and brought healing to more than one household. Emily's story also became a case study for professionals working in trauma, missing persons, and family reunification. Her experience offered valuable insights into identity, resilience, and the importance of trauma-sensitive approaches when working with survivors. Most importantly, her life demonstrated that even in the most complex and seemingly impossible cases, healing, reconnection, and the creation of new forms of family and belonging are possible. They may not look like what we once hoped for, but they can still be just as valuable and transformative. By the second year after her reunification, Emily had come to a deep realization. Her worth was not determined by what she could or couldn't remember about her past, but by how she chose to live in the present and build her future. That understanding became the foundation for a life that was complex yet fulfilling, challenging yet rich with purpose and connection. Today, in 2025, Emily works as a coordinator at a support center for families of the missing in Phoenix. Each morning, before starting her day, she looks at 3 framed photographs on her desk, one with the Carters on the day of her graduation, another with the Parkers during her last visit to Florida, and a third with both families together celebrating her wedding to Luis. Though she never regained the memories of her first 22 years, Emily built a full life where love did not need memory to exist. Her story continues to be a beacon of hope for those searching for loved ones, proving that sometimes what was lost can still find new ways to come home. On the wall of her office hangs a phrase she wrote years earlier: "We are not only our memories, we are also the choices we make every day."